started like any other bold announcement. A sharp declaration, cameras flashing, headlines scrambling to catch up. Tariffs. Yes, more tariffs. Another round targeting billions of dollars in imports. At first glance, it felt like a rerun of an old show. The same bluster, the same rhetoric about protecting American jobs, forcing foreign governments to play fair, and restoring the so-called greatness of domestic manufacturing. But what if I told you that was never really the point? What if the tariff was never designed to succeed as an economic tool, but rather as a smokescreen? A flashy distraction, a misdirection, while something else, something far more consequential, was quietly being set into motion behind the scenes. See, while the media was busy dissecting whether these tariffs would cripple the Chinese economy, or whether consumers at home would face higher prices at Walmart, something peculiar was unfolding in the quieter corners of the policy world. A network of private meetings, a flurry of executive orders drafted but not immediately signed, alliances being tested in ways the public wasn't paying attention to. And buried beneath the noise of trade wars and angry press conferences was the real play, a strategy decades in the making, a roadmap that didn't just aim to reshape America's trade policies but to fundamentally alter the architecture of its economic power. Think about it. Every time the tariff headlines dominated the news cycle, conversations shifted away from less flashy but far more impactful developments. Changes in regulatory frameworks, strategic moves in energy policy, aggressive repositioning in global manufacturing hubs far beyond China. Think Vietnam, India, even parts of Africa. This wasn't just about punishing foreign competitors. It was about setting the stage for a seismic shift in who controls supply chains, intellectual property, and ultimately geopolitical leverage for the next generation. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To understand the full scope of what's happening, we need to rewind, not to 2018, when the first major tariffs were announced, but even further, back to the late 1980s, when a young, brash businessman from New York was already flirting with the idea of leveraging trade threats as a form of negotiation. Back then, it was about casinos, hotels, and licensing deals. But the playbook was remarkably similar. Create chaos, draw attention, dominate the narrative, and while everyone else is scrambling to react, secure the real prize. Fast forward to the present, and that same strategy has been scaled up to fit the machinery of the federal government. Except now, the stakes are exponentially higher. We're not talking about licensing deals in Atlantic City. We're talking about the future of semiconductors, rare earth minerals, energy independence, the flow of capital between global power centers. And here's where it gets really interesting. While tariffs made for great sound bites, rallying cries for supporters, ammunition for critics, the underlying blueprint was never about the tariffs themselves. It was about leverage, pure calculated leverage. Let's take semiconductors as an example. While the headlines screamed about tariff increases on consumer electronics, behind closed doors, negotiations were underway with Taiwan, South Korea, and American tech giants to radically shift chip manufacturing back to U.S. soil. Not because tariffs would force companies to return, that was largely symbolic, but because policy incentives, tax breaks, and security guarantees were being engineered to make offshoring less attractive and onshoring an economic necessity. The same story unfolds in energy. While the trade war narrative dominated primetime news, executive orders were quietly loosening restrictions on domestic mining, fast-tracking permits for critical materials, and renegotiating energy partnerships that would decouple American infrastructure from volatile foreign sources. The goal wasn't just energy independence, it was energy dominance. And while everyone was arguing about the price of imported steel, the real moves were being made in lithium, cobalt, and nickel, the lifeblood of the future economy. And then there's the financial sector. Hidden beneath the tariff theatrics was a steady, calculated effort to repatriate capital. Changes to international tax law, aggressive audits targeting overseas tax shelters, quiet pressure campaigns on American multinationals to reduce foreign exposure. All of this framed publicly as national security concerns, but functionally, it was about rewiring the flow of money itself. But here's the kicker. while the public was fed a steady diet of drama. Trade wars, Twitter spats, press conference bombshells. The people inside the room knew the tariff was a prop. A shiny object designed to distract while the real machinery went to work. The machinery wasn't loud. It wasn't designed for TV. It was contracts, regulations, supply chain negotiations, and financial engineering. And let's not ignore the psychological game at play here. Distraction isn't just about hiding the ball. It's about shaping perception. By framing the fight as one against unfair trade practices, the administration was able to galvanize a certain kind of loyalty, a belief that this was a fight for the American worker, for fairness, for sovereignty. Meanwhile, the actual policies being crafted often served multinational corp. You wake up one morning and the headlines are everywhere. Tariffs. More tariffs. Bigger tariffs. Trump is back in the news, firing shots at foreign manufacturers, promising to bring jobs home, talking tough like always. But here's the thing. Everyone's looking at the shiny object. Everyone's focused on the noise, the tariffs, the numbers, the trade wars. But what if I told you that's not the real story? What if the tariffs are just the distraction? A well-calculated smokescreen, designed to keep your eyes glued to the wrong fight while something much bigger happens quietly in the background. Let's take a step back. Whenever Trump talks about tariffs, it triggers the same cycle. The media explodes. Economists start yelling. Politicians rush to either praise or condemn. Social media? A battlefield. People start debating whether this move is good for American workers, bad for global trade, or just plain reckless. But what no one's asking is, why now? Why is this tariff talk coming back, louder than ever? What's the timing really about? It's not just about economics. Sure, tariffs can influence prices, shift supply chains, maybe bring a few factories back, maybe not. But this isn't about balancing trade. It's not even about China, Mexico, or Europe. No, this is about power, influence, control. And more importantly, it's about reshaping the political landscape right before your eyes. Because while the media and the public are busy arguing about whether an extra 10% tax on imported steel makes sense, something else is happening behind closed doors. Something that has nothing to do with steel, cars, or manufacturing. It has everything to do with consolidating influence, building loyalty, and setting the stage for a much bigger game. A game that doesn't end with tariffs. If you look closely at the pattern, it becomes obvious. Every time the pressure heats up legally, politically, or financially, the distraction machine kicks into high gear. Tariffs are the perfect tool. They sound bold. They sound decisive. They stir emotion. They get everyone talking. But while the cameras are pointed there, the real moves are being made elsewhere. Think about it. Who benefits from the sudden attention shift? Who slips under the radar while every commentator is busy explaining trade policies? The answer isn't subtle. It's deliberate. While the tariffs dominate the news cycle, regulatory rollbacks accelerate quietly. Deals are cut. Policies change. Allies are rewarded. Critics get drowned out in the noise. And most people don't even notice until it's too late. There's also a psychological play here. Tariffs appeal to a certain nostalgia, a longing for an America that feels more secure, more self-sufficient, more powerful. It taps into very real economic pain that many Americans have felt for decades. And Trump knows how to weaponize that. He's not selling a trade policy. He's selling a story, a vision. And while that story plays out on your TV screen, the real negotiations are happening behind the scenes, far from public view. Behind the curtain, the focus isn't on trade deals. It's on building a network of businesses, influencers, political figures, media allies, all aligned, all incentivized to play along. Whether it's through tax incentives, deregulation, favorable contracts, or simple media exposure, the machinery is always running. And the louder the tariff talk, the faster that machinery moves, unnoticed. Let's be clear. This isn't about left or right. It's not about whether you love or hate Trump. It's about understanding the playbook. Because once you see the pattern, it's impossible to unsee. The tariff is the headline. The real story is in the fine print. In the policy shifts, the appointments, the restructuring of institutions, the subtle rewiring of how power flows in Washington and beyond. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Look at the timing. Every major tariff announcement coincides with something else. A legal challenge, an investigation, a scandal, a financial disclosure. It's never random. It's never just about trade. It's a chess move, a distraction combined with an acceleration of other agendas. For example, while everyone's arguing over whether a 25% tariff on Chinese goods will hurt Walmart prices, the administration is quietly pushing judicial nominations that reshape federal courts for decades. While the media debates soybean exports, environmental regulations get slashed. Healthcare rules shift. Tax codes are rewritten. And it all happens quietly, drowned out by the noise of trade war drama. And if you think this is just coincidence, think again. It's the same strategy used in business, in media, in politics. Flood the zone with noise. Get everyone looking one way while the real prize is being taken from another direction. It's misdirection, plain and simple. And it works. Now ask yourself, how does this pattern benefit Trump personally? Well, think about the way narratives are built. Every time there's a tariff announcement, the story becomes one of strength, toughness, America first. It energizes the base. It shifts the media cycle. It resets the conversation. And crucially, it buys time. Time to maneuver. Time to negotiate. Time to realign the chessboard. It also creates leverage. Not just internationally, but domestically. Businesses uncertain about the future are more willing to play ball. Political allies see the benefits of staying close. Critics find themselves overwhelmed by the sheer volume of chaos. And through it all, the focus shifts away from any single controversy, spreading attention so thin that nothing sticks for long. But here's where things take an even darker turn. The tariff announcements don't just serve political purposes. They serve financial ones too. Markets move on trade news. Stocks dip, surge, shift. And anyone with foresight or inside knowledge stands to profit massively from those moves. And while I'm not here to make accusations, the pattern is hard to ignore. Every tariff tweet, every press conference, every sudden escalation